Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another minty fresh edition of what we lovingly call Fred here at the Tulsa World Scene staff. It's our weekly podcast of um, whatever silly thing comes to mind that has something to do with art, culture, food, home design. Um, we may have to get into pets if we run out of topics very soon. But anyway, um, one of the things this is around the cusp of the change between February and March. Um, and March is coming in like a somewhat anemic lamb, but well, anyway. But it was 40 years ago on February 28th that one of the most watched TV episodes or moments occurred, and that was Mr. Trammell.
The finale of MASH. The top 30 broadcasts in U.S. history are 29 Super Bowls and MASH, the final episode of MASH in 1983. So basically, everybody who had a television was watching the farewell for MASH. And so last Sunday, I did a piece about here are how some other TV series ended. You may or may not remember how this show or that show ended. Do you guys prefer that a TV series end with a special episode, or you prefer they just end with a regular episode and in your mind, those characters can still be going on forever and ever and ever at what they're doing?
That's a good question. Grace?
Yeah. I think a special episode, like something a little bit longer to kind of wrap everything up in a nice clean bow. I kind of like that, so I have closure about how shows have ended. But what about you, Mr. Watts?
Yeah, we do. I'm all for ambiguity, but sometimes you do want things, tied up in some sort of nice little bow, or I don't know. There were I recall the final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which ends with, if I remember correctly, and I've not seen it since it aired, uh, Captain Picard joining the poker game amongst his other officers, and I believe the last line was, "I should have done this years ago." And so there's the sense of it's gonna go on. But if memory serves me right, I think the first TV series of which I was aware that had a definite ending in mind before it started was Babylon 5, which was a syndicated science fiction series. And it was supposed to be a 5-year story arc. And there was concern that they would, be able to pull it off, but they did. So it was, but yeah, so I kind of like both. You kind of like the sense that that you haven't wasted your time watching the show. I think people want a sense that this world is going to go on in some way or another. So
I feel badly for the shows that the cast doesn't find out that their show is over until it's too late. And then they could have done a farewell episode, but you're canceled, so see you later.
And that happens a great deal. And then of course, there's always shows that, hardly deserve a start, much less a finale. Jimmy, were you around? I'm fairly certain Grace doesn't remember seeing the final episode of MASH live, but were you around when it aired?
Yeah, I'm sure I would have watched it back in the day, and of course I've seen it since then. But really a fantastic episode, and I believe one of the character BJ, he says that they were advised by one of the producers, like we need to not have an episode like this. I mean, we want people to think it does go on forever. And he said, you are aware that the Korean War came to an end, right? And it's, oh, okay, yeah.
Oh yeah. Forgot about that odd little point there. But what was it was as you pointed out, it was one of the most popular, most watched television episodes of all time, or single shows. Do you think that given the way everything is so fractured in our entertainment world, that any other TV show could have the same sort of impact as the final episode of MASH?
No, because I think you only had 3 channels at that time. So there's a 33% chance you're watching this, that, or the other at any given time. Now there's so many options with streaming and networks and everything else that nobody has the same water cooler show over the long haul. Oh, but the short haul, for sure. But these series endings can be really polarizing. Like if one is done badly, it has a bad taste in your mouth. And done well, people talk about it forever. Like, I don't know, how do you guys feel about the Seinfeld finale?
I did see that. I came away from that going like, they didn't know how to get out of it. And so they to show that it was about nothing, they go back to the very beginning. And the last conversation they have in it is the first conversation they had in the first episode, if I remember correctly. But then there's my personal favorite of all of them has been Newhart.
Yeah.
Where he wakes up and he's back in the show that he was in the 70s. That was one of, I think that was absolutely brilliant.
Sure. Well, people were mad at the Sopranos ending because it just faded to black. So people thought their power went out or they lost transmission of the episode. Grace, what's your favorite television series of all time that ended, and how did it end?
I think what comes to mind for me is probably Friends. And I really, really enjoyed the season finale or series finale of that one, because I feel like the whole time you're watching it, you're really rooting for Ross and Rachel to get back together, and you don't know if it's going to happen or not. And then it finally does. And it's just so satisfying. And I feel like they give all of the characters just a good, proper ending. And it is a little bit ambiguous because Phoebe and Joey, it's like, are they going to get together? Are they not? It kind of leaves it up in the air for the audience to interpret. So I feel like they did a really good job with that one, like giving closure with some characters and then leaving the door open for some others. So I think that's probably my favorite series finale.
Okay. All right. Well, what else have we got? Let's begin with, let's go back to the beginning, and what have we got coming up for the rest of this week? Grace, what have you been working on for this week?
I have a preview of the upcoming HBA's Home and Garden show. That'll be coming out this Saturday. I spoke to several vendors and an organizer of the event. One of the vendors is Tulsa, New Holland, and they're like a farm equipment dealer who sells equipment from the company DeWalt. And I learned that DeWalt is actually going to be coming to the show, and they're going to have their NASCAR race car there and the DeWalt racing team at the Home and Garden show for people to meet. So I thought that was interesting. And I have a couple of other cool stories like that relating to the Home and Garden show. So that'll be this Saturday. And then sometime next week, I'll have an interview with the man behind the Instagram account Zillow Gone Wild. He's actually from, so it was really cool to talk with him. So that'll be coming up soon, probably next week.
For those of us who aren't into Zillow, either wild or tamed, what is Zillow Gone Wild?
Yeah, it's a really popular social media account, and it basically just shares the craziest listings that come up on Zillow, either really cool or really crazy. Like I've seen just some wild houses, and that's actually how the story that I wrote last year about that kind of UFO shaped home in Sand Springs. That's how it got on my radar, because I found it on his Instagram account. So he just shares really interesting homes. So it's one of my personal favorites.
Okay. How about you, Jimmy? What's coming up?
Well, that sounds really cool, and I want to read that when it's written by Grace. That sounds awesome. I've got a few entertainment things. I've got an interview either Friday or Sunday with a Broken Arrow 21-year-old resident there who's going to be on American Idol Sunday. He's only sang in his church ever, so obviously the stage will be much bigger on American Idol. A former Tulsan has written a book about Sheb Woolley, the actor and music artist who was in Rawhide and is famous for, among other things, the Wilhelm scream, the sound effect that has been used in Star Wars and a G another thing. But she was motivated to write the book because she loves the series Rawhide from, speaking of old TV series. One other thing I've got,
which launched the career of
Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, there you go.
I believe he played Rowdy Yates.
Rowdy Yates is the guy. That's right.
Okay.
And also I have a retelling, I believe in Sunday's paper, of how Oklahoma came to be the state song 70 years ago. It's a really neat story. If you haven't heard it before, even if you have heard it, it's so fun to go back and see the resistance there was to getting Oklahoma to being the state song, and what they did. They went to extremes to get that bill passed and say, yes, Oklahoma should be the state song.
Okay. It's I think it's the only state song to which people are expected to clap along. So let's see what we've got coming up. We will have an interview with Miss Almeed Studs, who runs Stut's House of Barbecue on East Apache. She's been operating her little barbecue stand for 30 years, and she's going to have she talks about all the people that have helped her through the years keep the place going and thriving. And it's she was a trip to talk to, so hopefully we'll be able to get that across. And we'll also interview Josh Tower, who will be coming to Tulsa March 7th as part of the cast of the musical Hamilton, which will be open a 2-week run at the Tulsa PAC. He plays Aaron Burr, who is sort of we won't say villain, but we'll definitely say he's the antagonist of the piece. So that's something that we'll have coming up this Sunday. And what else? Oh, we went to McKinney's Modern Dining in Broken Arrow, and we'll have a review of that in Wednesday's Tulsa World, available at fine newsstands everywhere and at tulsaworld.com. If there's nothing further to add.
I have a further.
He has a further. Oh, good.
I'll be hanging out Saturday at the Sherwood Miller Museum of Jewish Art for the Will Eisner Comic Fest. So if you want to get nerdy and look at comics and collectibles, come out to the Will Eisner Comic Fest on Saturday.
And check out the rest of the museum. It is definitely worth spending time there. All right. Well, I think that will wrap us up for this week's edition. We will put Fred to bed, and we will see you again later.
Behave.
Bye.